The 2023 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs are about to begin. Today, we're going to start our bracket challenge for our YouTube community, and I'm going to reveal my full predictions from the first round all the way through, including my Stanley Cup winner, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here, Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're going to reveal our bracket predictions for the upcoming 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs that are set to begin here in just a couple of days' time. The NHL regular season for the 22-23 season is now fully complete, and the playoffs are upon us. Half the league is now in off-season mode, and half the league is preparing for Game 1 of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we're going to go through series by series. I'm going to give you some stats on how these teams kind of stack up against each other, and give you my thoughts on why I'm picking the team and who's going to likely win, who's got the advantages, disadvantages, and that kind of stuff. So let's start with the Western Conference. So our first matchup will feature the defending Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche and the Seattle Kraken. So of course the Avalanche are the Central Division champs. The Seattle Kraken are the wildcard team number 1. So these two teams actually stack up pretty good. And the Kraken actually gave the Avalanche a hard time in the regular season, taking 2 out of 3 regular season games. But let's look at the stats here. The Avs scored an average of 3.2 goals per game. The Kraken scored 3.4 per game. So the Kraken actually a little bit better offensive output. Goals against, the Avalanche gave up an average of 2.73, or the Kraken 3.14. So advantage to Colorado in that sense. The power play, clear advantage to the Avalanche, 25.2 to 19.2. So it's a huge advantage that way. And PK certainly better as well. 79.7 for Colorado compared to 75.1 for the Kraken. So if you take a look at things here, defensively, the Avalanche have an advantage. I think they have better, more consistent goaltending. I think we've seen that. That's one thing with the Kraken this year. Their goaltending has not been the most consistent and could certainly be better. And I think for them to be a more serious playoff team, that's going to be something that they need to get in future seasons ahead. Special teams is clear advantage Colorado, a more potent power play, a more aggressive PK. So they should win the special teams game. They should defend better. They shouldn't give up less. And like I said, even though they technically scored a little bit less than the Kraken during the regular season, this team has faced a ton of adversity and had a lot of injuries, a lot of games lost to top players, including not having captain Gabe Landeskog all year, who's also going to miss the playoffs. Cale Makar's missed a fair bit of time. McKinnon's missed time. Like they've got all their top guys have been out for the most part, with the exception of Brandon for the most part here, quite a bit. So overall, I give the Avs the edge in goaltending. I give them the edge in experience. I give them the edge in special teams and team defense. Even though Seattle's going to offensively put up a tough show, they're not going to have Burakovsky from the first round, which is going to certainly hurt a little bit as well. And I'm picking the Avalanche to win this series. I will give the Kraken a little bit more respect than some. I'm going to say it's going to take the Avalanche 6 games, since the Kraken gave them such a hard time in the regular season, and they are a pretty good offensive team. I think we're going to see them take at least 1 or 2 games to make this series at least interesting. So we're going with Colorado for your first series. The next one, we have the 2 versus 3 series in the Central Division. The Dallas Stars against the Minnesota Wild. These two teams actually stack up pretty good. They had a split series in the regular season, so a couple of wins for each team. The Dallas Stars are a little bit better offensively, scoring an average of 3.4 goals per game, or Minnesota 2.9. Goals against, slight edge to the Wild with 2.61 compared to 2.73 for Dallas. Power play, slight advantage for Dallas, 23.2 compared to 21.6. Slight edge on PK as well for Dallas, 83.5 compared to 80.9. So theoretically, Dallas should win the special teams game. They are a little bit more offensively potent as well. We've seen in like last year, Jake Ottinger almost won a playoff series on his own. So as much as Minnesota has really good goaltending with Fleury and Gustafsson, I think Ottinger is pretty darn good as well and is capable of winning and stealing the series as much as anybody else in this playoffs. So I do think that it's not a huge edge goaltending-wise because Minnesota's goaltending has been really good. So it's pretty even in that sense, in my opinion. I think you're going to see good goaltending on both ends of the ice, which is good. But Dallas's special teams advantage, goals for advantage, I think more offense And Minnesota, I don't know that they're going to be able to keep up here, especially with the goaltending not being really favorable. Like in some matchups they'd win, but Jake Ottinger is certainly going to be tough to beat, and I just don't know if they have the offensive output to do so. I'm picking the Dallas Stars to win this series. I do think it's going to go as much as 6 games, however. Now, jumping over to the next series in the West and the Pacific, we get the Vegas Golden Knights, who are the Pacific Division champions, doing battle with the Winnipeg Jets, who are wildcard team number 2. So Vegas, as long as they are in the playoffs, they will have the home ice advantage throughout the Western Conference playoffs because of the top seed being awarded to them, having the best point totals of the regular season. Now let's compare Vegas to Winnipeg. We have goals for, 3.2 compared to 2.9. So Vegas is scoring on a higher rate. Goals against is the same, 2.8 per game on average. So, that's not really negligible there. Power play, Vegas has a stronger one, 21.2 to 19.3. PK, however, advantage to Winnipeg, 82.8 compared to Vegas' 77.5. You're likely going to see former teammate goalies going head-to-head in Laurent Brossoit against Connor Hellebuyck. Vegas might have Mark Stone coming back, who's been out for a significant part of the time, which is obviously a huge plus. Winnipeg, I think, is probably a better defensively team right now. I mean, I think overall, as much as Brossoit has played well since he's had the opportunity near the end of the season, and he's obviously hasn't played a ton this year, missed a lot of time as well because of injury, but he's, according to Bruce Cassidy, he's going to be starting game 1. I don't know that he can keep up with Connor Hellebuyck. He used to be Connor Hellebuck's backup. Now, he's played well as of late, but Connor Hellebuyck has shown time and time again he has the ability to steal a game and can certainly give his team an edge. They won the big important games coming down the stretch when it mattered most, and I think that they're probably feeling a lot better about themselves. However, I think this is going to be a really tall, tough task to beat the Vegas Golden Knights. I think it's fair to say that the Vegas team, especially the forward positions, a little bit deeper. Like I said, Vegas, I don't know about defense-wise. I'm going to say Winnipeg might be a little bit better team defensively, but it's not a huge advantage. It's negligible in that sense. And the special teams is kind of a split as well. Vegas is a better power play. Winnipeg is a better PK. So all in all, I'm picking Vegas to win this series. I do think because of Connor Hellebuyck, he will make it interesting, and it's going to take Vegas at least 6 games to knock off the Winnipeg Jets. But to me, the Jets have enough issues with what we've seen. They've been inconsistent this year, which is why they slipped down to being a wildcard team instead of being a top 3. And I just don't know that they're going to be able to show up enough to take on this Vegas team and really challenge them. So Vegas wins this series, in my opinion. Now, next up, we get the 2-3 series in the Pacific Division, featuring the Edmonton Oilers and the Los Angeles Kings for the second year in a row. Now, of course, goals against, goals for, we have definitely an advantage for the Edmonton Oilers in the scoring department. They have scored an average of 3.9 goals per game compared to 3.3 on Los Angeles. Goals against is pretty darn close, 3.2 to 3.1. Not a great deal of difference that way. The Oilers do have a big advantage on the power play, over 32%, which is ridiculous. LA's power play, being where it is at 25, is still really good too. PK-wise, neither one of them super strong. Pretty close on both sides there. Certainly, power play is going to likely feast on both sides. If either power play goes cold, that could certainly be a major factor in that sense. I do think the way Stuart Skinner's played this year, I think we're going to give an edge in goaltending to Skinner. Obviously, the LA Kings have had some really solid goaltending as well, which is probably why they are where they are, to be completely honest. Defensively speaking, I don't know that there's a great deal of difference either way. The Oilers, in my opinion, are a much better defending team. Matthias Ekholm very well could have been the biggest, most positive impact trade deadline acquisition. I'm not sure a lot of people would have predicted that, but he's really helped how the Oilers defend. He's really made a huge difference in that back end, and I really like how they've played since they've picked him up. They have been an absolute wagon going down the stretch here the last 15, 20 games. I don't think LA can shut them down. I do think, like last year, look a little bit hard time. I think they can grab a win or two, but I think overall the Oilers are going to win, and I'm going to say it's going to be done in 5 games. I think they're going to get through LA a little bit faster than they did last year. I think the Oilers are a stronger, deeper, more offensive team than they were before. This team is absolutely loaded. They're finally defending better. They get solid goaltending, which is what their issues have been before. I think they're going to be a lot tougher team to beat out than many people might think. The Oilers, to me, are going to be going on a run here, and you'll see my further predictions as we get deeper into the future rounds here. What's up, round 2 in the West of the Avalanche against the Stars and the Golden Knights against the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Colorado versus Dallas first up. Now, my big concern with the Colorado Avalanche, again, is health. And, they've been through a lot. They had a deep playoff run winning a Stanley Cup last year, which pushed their season really late, which reduces the recovery time, reduces their training time. It can really be quite taxing on the players and on the body after going that long, having a short summer. However, they've had a lot of time off because of injuries this year, so some players might actually be rested. I think they could have the ability to go through more than just one round. But I think overall, the Dallas Stars are probably going to have a slight edge in goal. Georgiev, though, for the Avalanche has been phenomenal. Offensively speaking, I think the Avalanche are going to be, pretty comparable here. I think the Dallas Stars have been a pretty potent offensive team as well. Special teams, there's going to be an advantage. Over could get that stronger power play going. Both had really good power plays all year. They've both been pretty good on special teams. So overall, I do think in the round 2, though, I think the Avalanche are going to be able to get through the Dallas Stars. I think if they can stay healthy, that's my only concern. If they get a bunch more injuries, that's certainly going to impact things. It could alter my predictions here. But at the end of the day, Cale Makar, Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, I think are going to be too much of an offensive firepower for Dallas. As much as they're good defensively and have good goaltending, I think the Dallas Stars are going to run into a situation where they're going to be equally matched, if not outmatched in those categories. And the Avalanche are going to win that series in 6 games. Now, the other series is going to feature Vegas against Edmonton. Now, as I said, the Edmonton Oilers, to me, are going to be a real force in this year's playoffs. And I think after getting through Winnipeg, Vegas is still, they're a team that's battled a lot of injuries this past year. I don't know how much the goaltending can hold up longer term. And running into a team like the Edmonton Oilers, I think their goaltending is going to be exposed. There's no way I can see Vegas beating Edmonton 4 games out of 6 or 7 in the series. I think Edmonton has an advantage offensively. I think Edmonton's going to have an advantage defensively. And Stuart Skinner, if he can play with Brossoit, which I think he can do, they're going to have an edge that way too. To be completely honest, I think the Edmonton Oilers will be able to handle Vegas and get through them in a maximum of 6 games. I would not be surprised if it even went a little bit shorter than that. So that was set up a Western Conference final of Edmonton against Colorado. Yes, we've seen this before. McKinnon against McDavid. 2 top stars going head-to-head. This time, we're going to have a different outcome. I am this time picking the Edmonton Oilers to beat the Avalanche. I think eventually, after a couple of rounds of playoff hockey, the Avalanche are going to run out of steam. As I mentioned, they were last year's Cup champions. Short, off season because of going so deep, which is tiring on them. They battled a lot of injuries this year. It's bound to catch up to them, or eventually this high-powered, offensively, brutal force of the Oilers is just going to come through like a wrecking ball and probably take down those Avalanche teams and put them out of the playoffs here and have a new Stanley Cup champion this year. I think the Oilers, myself, are poised to win the Western Conference. Stuart Skinner has given them that solid goaltending they've been missing the past couple of years. I do think the addition of Matthias Ekholm has allowed them to defend much better. And offensively, this forward group is as deep as we've seen in a long time. Like, look at the numbers that McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins are putting up. Their supporting casts are even pitching in at a better rate as well. Offensive is coming from the back end too. To me, I don't think Colorado can stop the Oilers this time. They did last year, but I think we're going to see a changing of the guard and have the Edmonton Oilers win the Western Conference. Now, on the Eastern Conference side, we're going to start with the Boston Bruins against the Florida Panthers. Obviously, this is going to be a fairly fun matchup, but I think the Bruins are going to be able to outmatch Florida pretty easily here. If you take a look at the analysis between the two teams, we have goals for of 3.6 to 3.4, so the Bruins have an advantage there. Goals against, well advantage here. Florida's giving up 3.4 goals against per game, whereas the Bruins are giving up closer to 2. That's pretty substantially different right there. Major advantage for Boston. We have a slight edge on the power play for Florida, but not drastically. In the PK, way better for Boston. To me, you've got Ullmark and Swayman who's going to outduel the Florida goaltending. They're going to be able to outpower them offensively, and they're going to be able to defend much better. The Florida defense is very suspect to me. I know they were fortunate to get into the playoffs. They had a good run down and stretch to make sure they got in. For some of those guys, hopefully it's a good experience. But like last year, we're going to see Florida take an early exit and fall into the Bruins. And I think the Boston Bruins can take them out in as many as 5 games. Now, the next series is going to be really interesting. Toronto against Tampa. Will this be the year that the Leafs finally win in the first round? Can they actually do it this year? They lost in Game 7 to Tampa last year. And, well, what's going to happen this year? Let's take a look at the stats here, see how they match up. Offensively speaking, goals for, they're identical on average per game. So both potent offensively. Goals against, the Leafs do have an edge this year, 2.7 against 3. Power play, very slight advantage, 25.2 to 25.1. Both teams can put on a wicked power play. Penalty killing wise, slight edge again to the Leafs as well. You get Vasilevsky against Samsonov. But if you take a look at the goalie stats, Samsonov's actually has in some ways had a better regular season than Vasilevsky, but Vasilevsky has played a lot more as well. So you have to wonder the impact of the playing time. Now, of course, Vasilevsky is always super dialed in the playoffs, and playoff Vasilevsky is a scary thing to face for most clubs. So I think you can fair to say that offensively speaking, they're pretty evenly matched. Defensively speaking, I think we can say there's a slight edge to the Leafs. I think they've been able to improve their defensive core over the last year, whereas Tampa has had to subtract and are probably a little bit weaker that way. Special teams, slight edge to the Leafs, but not much. It's pretty close. You have the experience instead of Vasilevsky in goal. Again, it's hard to say an advantage Toronto between the pipes. I don't think we can say that. The Lightning will have the edge there, but do they have the ability to overcome that slight goaltending difference? If Samsonov plays up to the way he's played in the regular season, and Vasilevsky is closer to regular season Vasilevsky than previous playoff Vasilevsky in the past, then it could be advantage Toronto. It's hard to say, but it's just really tough to bet against this Tampa Bay team. It really is. But when you take a look at the fact that the Lightning down the stretch really seem like they're slowing down, they do have some injuries. Tanner Jeannot's likely not going to be available to them, which was a player they paid a lot to pick up at the deadline. That's going to hurt. I do think that they're slower than the Leafs, which is going to be a problem. They're obviously, like I said, just getting a little bit older and tired, where the Leafs are still that up-and-coming energetic team. I think the Leafs can do it this year. I do still think it's going to go 7 games. It's going to keep Leaf fans stressed and on their toes, but this will be the year they finally get a series victory, and they will take down the Tampa Bay Lightning in 7 games. Now, the next series on the Metro Division is going to feature the Carolina Hurricanes, the division winners, against the New York Islanders, wildcard team number 1. Let's take a look at how these two teams stack up. Goals for, definitely an advantage. Carolina, an average of 3.2 compared to 2.9. Goals against, again, slight edge to Carolina, 2.59 to 2.65. Power play, again, edge Carolina, 20.4 to 16.4. PK, 83.6 to 81.9. Again, advantage Carolina. This Islanders team, to me, is going to rely heavily on Ilya Sorokin. They will go as far as he can take him, but he only can do so much. He's only one guy. They don't have that offensive firepower to really get those big goals when needed. As really said, they definitely seem to struggle. They still have some younger players that will be prone to making a few defensive lapses and mistakes. And as much as they did well to get in the playoffs, I don't think they're really well positioned to have playoff success. I think they would have matched up a little bit better against New Jersey, but even then, I don't know that they would have had the ability to take them down. I think the Carolina Hurricanes can take out the Islanders in as little as 5 games. So we will see how that goes, but that's my prediction on that one. Now, the next one is going to be real interesting. The Devils against the Rangers for the first time in quite some time. Of course, very close proximity to each other. Travel will be very limited, of course. They'll be able to sleep in their own beds, which is going to be good. Let's see how these two teams match up together as well. Goals for, pretty similar, 3.4 to 3.3. Goals against, again, super similar, 2.7 to 2.6. Power play, very close as well, 22.9 for the Rangers, 21.3 for the Devils. PK, pretty close too, 82.1 to 80.48. If you look at goaltending, you're going to have Vanecek against Shesterkin. They obviously, had good regular seasons. It's really hard for me to say that there's to not say advantage Shesterkin. To me, he's been a real force. And to me, if he plays anything like he did in last year's playoffs, the Rangers are going to have a real advantage in that department. I think defensively speaking, they have a really solid blue line. I don't know that the Devils can say they have an advantage that way. Maybe slight edge Rangers, although the Devils do defend well. Offensively speaking, they have a lot of young firepower mixed in with a little bit of veteran players, but for the most part, they're led by their youth. The Rangers made some massive deadline acquisitions, which is not going to impact their overall yearly stats nearly as much. But adding Patrick Kane, adding Tarasenko to this deep group of forwards that already features Zibanejad and Kreider, and obviously they had Vinny Trocheck in the second center spot. Like, they have a lot of strong, highly powered forwards in this group. The kid line is usually the third line. Heel, Kako, Lafreniere played well. They've taken some steps as well. And I don't know, as much as New Jersey's been a young, exciting team, they're greatly improved. The amount they've improved in the standings from one year to the next is absolutely crazy. An incredible feat by the Devils and head coach Lindy Ruff. I don't know that they can take down the Rangers, though, in an experienced playoff series. The Rangers have a ton of experience, especially after last year's run. I think this is going to be a wake-up call and a learning curve for the Devils, and the Rangers will win this series in 6 games. So lots in the Eastern Conference going to set up a second round of Boston against Toronto and Carolina against the Rangers. Now, the Bruins and the Leafs will be interesting again. Now, this time around, as much as Toronto had some advantages over Tampa, this Bruins team has been, they're not perfect, of course, but they've had such an impeccable season overall. They're going to be able to compete with Toronto offensively, defensively, and have an edge in goal, whereas Toronto, based on regular season numbers at least, could be a lot more comparable to Tampa in those other spots. Now, I know Toronto has actually given Boston a pretty good run during their regular season matchups. I do think this is going to be a 7-game series, but ultimately, I think the Boston Bruins are the ultimate kryptonite for Toronto when it comes to shutting down their top young offensive players, and the Bruins have the defense and the goaltending to back all of it up while allowing their top guys to have chances to break through. It's going to be tough for Toronto to shut down Pasternak and Marchand and all these guys that they picked up here. Taylor Hall should be back and healthy. Hopefully Krejci's available. Jake DeBrusk is playing well. Brad Marchand. It's not going to be an easy task by any means. I think the Bruins will once again vanquish the Leafs in a 7-game series, and it's going to be very, very interesting right until the end. Now, the other second-round series in the East will feature the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers. Now, my big concern for the Canes this year is the lack of that major scoring. They don't have Max Pacioretty, who was their big offseason acquisition. He's gone for the year. Their regular top sniper, Svechnikov, again, gone for the year. They already needed another scorer in their lineup besides Svechnikov, which they acquired and then lost, and then they lost Svechnikov too. I don't know that they can go on a deep playoff run with both of these players out of the lineup. I think both teams will defend well. Both teams will have comparable special teams numbers. Goaltending-wise, I think SJSTerritory obviously is a real solid goaltender. The Canes have good goaltending too with Freddie Anderson and Antti Ranta. I think they can keep their team in it and give them a chance. But at the end of the day, my concern here is the ability from Carolina to be able to put up enough goals against this Rangers team to really make it interesting. I think the Rangers can take out Carolina, and I'm going to say 6, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's even 5 games. That will set up an Eastern Conference final of the Boston Bruins against the New York Rangers. Now, so this is going to be an interesting matchup. Battle of original 6 teams. Shesterkin against Allred. The way Allred has played this year, I don't think we can say that any team is going to have an advantage when he's in the lineup. Obviously, Bruins goaltending will have an edge in this series here as well. Special teams, again, it's going to be tight. It's going to be close. Goals for, they both have a potent offense. They both have good blue lines. And this is going to be a very tight and interesting series. But as I mentioned all season, this Boston Bruins team to me has had, last dance vibes to it all year with Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci coming back, Jake DeBrusk rescinding his trade request. After Bruce Cassidy left, it became a whole different team and they wanted to play there again. Jim Montgomery's had a completely different approach. Cassidy was a good coach, had a lot of success, but became the kind of voice that was very grinding on his team, very high demanding. Montgomery, very different approach, has allowed his team to play different, and they enjoy it more and having a lot more success. To be honest, I don't know that the Rangers can really outmuscle that. The way Allred has played, Vezina level quality. The blue line is solid, and they have the offensive boot. I think the Bruins are going to win the Eastern Conference. Top team in the NHL all year long. I have no reason to doubt them yet, and they will overcome the Rangers in 6 games. That will set up your Stanley Cup Final as the Boston Bruins against the Edmonton Oilers. Now, this is where the Bruins are going to run into a hard time because this is the most gifted offensive team we've seen in the NHL in a really long time. I mean, the numbers that McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins and others on that team are putting up are absolutely insane. The Boston Bruins, as much as they're going to have an edge in goal between Ullmark over Skinner, I think defensively speaking, the Bruins will also have theoretically a slight edge as well, but the Oilers are much better than they used to be. Greatly improved, that much is for sure. But as good as those things are, I don't think that they're going to be able to stop McDavid and Draisaitl this year. Like I said, they have the ability to just keep pushing through. They are playing with way more confidence because they know they're going to get the big save when they need it. They're knowing that their team behind them is defending much better. It's allowing them to play even more free and liberated and allowing them to take everything to a higher, new, more exciting level. And this year, the Edmonton Oilers will be your 2023 Stanley Cup champions, the best player in the world today. Connor McDavid will hoist the Stanley Cup over his head as they defeat the Boston Bruins in 6 games. Now, as I mentioned as well, this is my full bracket. I want to see what all of your predictions are as well. There is a community NHL bracket challenge league that's been open. I will share it in the pinned comment down below. I will also make likely a community post on the channel in the next couple of hours as well, so stay tuned for that. Join our league. It's just for fun. There's no prizes. It's just for bragging rights. There's really no need to do anything of that nature. This is just for a community of people who want to have some fun, put their predictions in, and let's just see who gets the most right for bragging right purposes. So let me know if you're going to join, leave a comment, and I hope you do it and have some fun. And let me know who your picks are for this year's Stanley Cup. For now, look forward to seeing all your brackets submitted on the league on the NHL site. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.